This is episode 15 of Chris Sweeney Talks To, and today I'm joined by David Wheeler. He is the president and co-founder of American Muckrakers, and we're going to find out exactly what that is. First of all, David, thank you for joining me, and how are you today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be on your show, Chris. We're live from Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. And how is it in Denver today? What have you been up to today in Denver? Anything controversial?
Well, the weather's beautiful. They had snow in the mountains. They had a foot of snow in the mountains just yesterday, where I'm headed later today. But yeah, we're here to do what we did to Madison Cawthorn, the now soon to be ex-member of Congress, to hopefully the next ex-member of Congress, the infamous Lauren guns on her waist, Boebert. And as they call her out here, they call her Bobo. So I don't know why, but I don't know how that translates in your country.
Well, I was going to say, the Twitter, your sort of title of the website on Twitter is "We built a coalition and fired Madison Cawthorn in May 2022 with facts and a lot of help from donors and supporters. Now it's Lauren Boebert's turn to be fired." So maybe we could start with Madison Cawthorn, because he was, for people maybe outside of America, he was quite an interesting character, because I think he was only 25 when he was elected, which is, I think he was one of the youngest, and I think he's the only ever congressperson born in the 1990s, and he was in a wheelchair. There's obviously the sort of diversity and stuff, that was a good thing, and there was a lot of things maybe that people appeared to him be quite positive about him, and he's quite a high profile, but you kind of took the opposite approach. You felt his politics and the direction he was heading were not correct for America.
Well, right. I'm a Democrat, which is the liberal party in this country, and I actually ran for office in 2018 and 20 for the North Carolina State Senate, which each state has its own little parliament, and lost both those races. But I was in a Trump 75 plus percentage district, so I knew I was going to lose, but I was there to really challenge the Republican, keep them honest. But I got to know Colonel Mo Davis, who was Cawthorn's opponent in 2020, and Mo and I just decided after the election that we had created some momentum and built some networks that we wanted to carry on, and we looked at Cawthorn. A little background on Cawthorn. You're correct. He was actually 24 when he was elected. So had he actually taken oath of office, he wouldn't have been legal. He had to be 25.
Yeah.
But by the time January rolled around, he was 25. Actually, I think it was in August he turned 25. But he was brought in, and we had a lot of hope for the guy. He's very young. He's very smart. He's charismatic. He's handsome. He's in a wheelchair. He's overcome diversity. He has a great relationship in the community. But the more we learned that really wasn't the real Madison Cawthorn. And he went to college for not even a half a semester, or 6 months, and was kicked out. He claims he quit. He was actually kicked out of university. And we just kept learning more and more information. He likes people to think that his injury was based upon the military service. That's not the case at all. He was in a terrible car accident, which obviously we don't wish upon anybody, and we're sorry that happened to him. But he's used his handicap, we think, in an unethical way, letting people think that he was part of the military. He said he was training for the Paralympics. He'd never trained for the Paralympics. He claims to be a motivational speaker. He's never done any motivational speaking, on behalf of the disability community in the United States. So the more we dug, the more we realized the guy was just a fake. He really was just a figment of his own imagination, if that's possible. Is it possible to be a figment of your own? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, so we decided to take him on, but not in a traditional slash and burn gossip I don't know if I can cuss on this, but bullshit. And we decided to focus on facts because there were enough facts out there. And he was pretty popular at the time. We started this 4 months into his first term of, our terms for Congress run 24 months. So he was only, a very short period into it. And we decided to start exposing him for the real person that he was. So.
I mean, in terms of taking that on, what kind of reaction did you get initially? Was it quite difficult to build momentum? And I'm sure Madison, the fact that you were sort of focused solely on him, how did he take this? Did you have words with him? Did he try to kind of reach across the divide and try to clear some things up for you, or was he quite adversarial about it all?
Yeah, good, really good question, Chris. We weren't very subtle about, in the typical American way, we weren't very subtle about our organization's aims. Fire Madison, it's hardly, kind of open to outreach. But I think that's one of the fatal, honestly, that in hindsight, not to pat ourselves too much on the back, but I think that was one of their fatal mistakes. Was they assumed we were just a bunch of crazy liberals or socialists, as they like to call us, and that we were really fringy. But the reality was, Mo and I are actually pretty moderate to middle of the road liberals, Democrats, if that's possible, on some issues. Obviously, there are certain issues we're more in alignment with traditional Democratic Party, but I don't think they took us seriously. But we took our jobs very seriously. We were able to put a coalition of people within Western North Carolina, and it's 16 counties is the district, so it's very big, of people that you remember he right away, Cawthorn on 1/6, the insurrection on January 6th was in, he said he had a gun on the floor. He said, he spoke at the rally before, the Stop the Steal rally. He'd worn a shooting jacket, which folks in your country will recognize. We don't necessarily wear those here, but with the leather patch up here where you hold, then to a rally, and he had a 4.5-inch dagger in his wheelchair that day. And you can't have that stuff in DC. DC is very highly regulated about, in some ways that London probably is too, where, you can't have the concealed weapons on your body. Completely illegal, even if you're a member of Congress. So anyway, he's running around town. He's playing tough guy. He's part of the 1/6, and that obviously turned off more people. So we immediately had an audience of people that were willing to help us, not only in the district, but outside the district. So we were kind of filling a gap of people that were looking for a place to put their frustration about the guy, because it was way off from the next campaign. So we got a lot of good reception. We raised some money to fund the effort, and but it was slow going because he was still pretty popular, and we didn't really have a lot of juicy information yet. So.
And in terms of, sort of maybe going after him, I'd like to hear more about that as we go on. But the first thing I'd like to ask maybe is, because he's quite young, well, young for politics, or very young for politics, is there a feeling that he was a kind of a stooge, a kind of a front man, and there was people behind him? Or do you think he was actually, believed in what he was doing and kind of leading it? Do you think he was a serious politician that just kind of went off on a different path? Or I guess his age gives you that feeling that maybe he was a kind of a front man for another group or another body of people.
No, I don't think that was there. I think he seriously, he had worked for a member of Congress as an intern. I think he was looking for a calling and looking for a place to do good things. And that was the irony. He campaigned well. He's such a good looking guy that I think most people kind of they don't look any deeper than his appearance. The wheelchair obviously gives him an immediate bit of sympathy from voters and others, if that's all you know about the guy. So, and I don't know him, so I don't know what his intentions were. I've not met him on but I've been in a room with him. So I don't know what his intentions or his motives are. And there was no real indication that there was, any external forces kind of pushing him to do this, whether it was Russians or other people. I think he was just a really good salesman, and he sold a lot of the Republican Party, the conservative party in our country, that he was the next, guy. And he kind of fit all these things. The next generation of Republicans. And in some ways, I guess he is. But next generation of Republicans in his mind versus next generation in maybe some of the older Republicans' minds, that's where the clash started, was he really didn't represent what traditional Republicans see as the future. And then obviously the Never Trump group, that's significant within any part of our country, realized Cawthorn had aligned himself with Trump. And so that was the beginning of the divergence, I think, and the opportunity for us was he really started to create some schisms in his own party, the folks that maybe had voted for him. So
in terms of, as you got more momentum and you were doing more, were people maybe calling you with information from offices and saying, well, he did this or he did that or this happened, and then how did the Cawthorn and his people, how did their attitude change towards you? Because I guess at some points you're making breakthroughs, so you're no longer just these crazy guys on the left, as you refer to yourself. That's not how I would refer to you, but do you know what I mean? Did they start to look at you a bit more seriously?
I don't think so, Chris. I don't think up to the election day they took us seriously. I think, and again, I think not that we're God's gift to investigative politics, but even if they just did a little background check on Mo Davis and I, they'd see that we're serious people. I mean, Mo Davis ran all the prosecutions in Guantanamo Bay. I mean, for the U.S. government. For the U.S. military, and quit over it because Bush wanted to be able to admit information that they had gleaned, not he, but that the investigators had gleaned under torture. And Mo said, I'm not going to use that in court. And he got fired. So he's that kind of guy. And I've started multiple businesses, worked with heads of state, and produced events all over the world. So, it's not like we're just a couple pushover idiots that don't have anything else to do. Had they done any background, they would have realized, well, wait a second, maybe you should take these guys a little more serious. But they never did. And we didn't care because we had one goal, was to get him fired and expose him for the real person he was, and then let voters decide, is this the guy you really want representing you? And a conservative, rural farmer, rancher, entrepreneur, couple small cities, part of North Carolina. And so they didn't take us seriously. We took our job seriously. And, right away, we got some tips about him trying to bring a gun through the Asheville airport. And I just saw that as an immediate opportunity. It's easy to understand. It's something that none of us could do and not get in trouble, so and nobody else was investigating it. So we went and got public information, police report. Then they wouldn't give us the police audio traffic communication around that incident. So we had to fight them a little bit on that with our attorney and their attorney, and they finally gave it to us under a public information request. And that was the start, because it was audio. You could hear the cops saying, Madison Cawthorn, member of Congress, he's got a gun, it's loaded. Who brings a loaded? I mean, I think he was probably trying to take it to DC. He claims that it was, I forgot about my gun in my carry-on baggage, but incomprehensible in your country. It's probably more comprehensible in this stupid country some days. a stupid country and that people do this sort of thing. Not that we're a stupid country. Don't use that out of context,
no,
people.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I love my country. But, so we got that tip and we used it and we were serious about it, but we didn't politicize it. We didn't put it into an ad and, Madison Cawthorn is the worst person in the world. We just put it out there and put it into the press, and, gave it to a couple of journalists. We then took it. And then next thing you know, we're blown up with traffic and the audio was on our website. And then that created some credibility with us, but they still didn't take us seriously. They never responded. Well, they responded to press inquiries, but they never really responded to us directly.
And the thing I'm fascinated to ask you about, because obviously I'm looking at all this, in retrospect. I mean, it's all happened, but when you were doing it, in terms of disseminating, spreading information or disseminating information to the people of North Carolina, the voters. There's this thing on. I guess we all see social media accounts or websites, and sometimes they're dismissed as kind of, it's kind of cranks. And again, I use that word. I mean, no disrespect to anyone who's got mental health problems, but that kind of loose term for.
There are plenty of cranks in this country, and you don't need to give them. You don't need to give them respect. So,
well, you know what I mean, but there's all these websites where people put stuff up, and you dismiss. I think I see a lot of them in the nature of my job, and you could probably dismiss 95% of them. How did you avoid slipping into that?
We just used facts. We didn't go down any gossip path. We didn't publish any innuendo or altered video or altered images. And we didn't get political about it. We just said we put it in a political context, but we didn't say, because he did this, you should do this. It was more, here's the information, voter. Is this really the guy that you want representing us? And then, initially people were like, no, it's guns, whatever. It was a mistake. Okay. But then the second time, it's not a mistake. And then the third time, it's like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? And then we just kept piling on, but, very careful about what information we did post and leak and investigate. So it would follow this narrative of who really is this guy? But not because it doesn't work if it's in your face to voters. You can't tell people what to think. You have to, in this instance, we just had to put it out there and let them make their own determination. And I think to this day, we still try and hold that line. Now, some of the comments that I make or others make to the press or others maybe get political sometimes, but you know what, Chris, there's only so long I can keep some of this shit in about this guy. I mean, and his and our new target, Lauren Boebert's people, they get in our face. And, a typical politician's response when somebody gets into their face is, oh, well, thank you very much for your comments. And, I respect your opinion. Well, bullshit. No, you're full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not going to take the crap from you just because you think somehow your candidate's better than mine or better than me. And you think you can call and harass me, because that's what happens. These MAGA people think, oh, because Madison Cawthorn was elected and I'm with him, I can, and he doesn't take you guys serious. Well, I'm going to call and harass you. Well, no, that's not true. And I record almost every call that I get from a number that I don't recognize. I don't record calls with staff or with friends and family and stuff. We turn them over to law enforcement, and that's the other difference between what we're doing and what kind of typical lazy politicians, both sides, Republican and Democrat, do. But, we fight back. We're going to fight back against our target. If they come after us, we're going to come after them with facts. And if their supporters think they can just roughshod, I've been called a pedophile in the last week. I have 3 children under the age of 12. If I was a fucking pedophile, the local police or Department of Social Services would have arrested me by now. And, typical politicians, they don't respond. They just kind of let that stuff go. Well, it hangs there. And then people hear pedophile. He didn't say anything. Well, I'm not going to put up with that shit. And nobody on our campaign or our team should either. And so I'm up on my high horse right now, but
no. I mean, it's it's not a nice. It's not a nice thing for anyone to be called, and that's outrageous.
I'm a person. I'm a human being.
That's outrageous.
I am a person.
Yeah.
Now, am I trying to do something that's opposed to what your way of thinking? Yeah, but maybe your way of thinking needs to be altered, because you're not coming up with any arguments for me to change my mind about Lauren Boebert or Madison Cawthorn. And I'm open to it, and I engage with anybody that calls or talks to me. I mean, or emails or whatever. For the most part, if they want to have a conversation. Now, if they're just going to be a one-way threat,
sure, yeah,
I'm going to put up with that nonsense. And we do turn it over to, people are really stupid, Chris. I mean, they just call you from their number, threaten you, with bodily harm, which I don't take them seriously. I'm not worried about it yet, because they're from Texas. We're going to drive up to anyway. Don't want to get any ideas, but I turn it over to law enforcement, and law enforcement, they'll get a visit. It'll be on their record. And it's amazing what people think they can get away with in this Trump, Cawthorn, Boebert era, that, whatever goes, because somehow, and this is, maybe getting a little too esoteric, but, these MAGA people think we're not people, that oppose anything that Trump wants to do, Cawthorn or Boebert. They think we're somehow this sinister aliens that don't have feelings, that don't have children, that don't care about them. Actually, we probably care more about these rural folks and MAGA folks than the MAGA organization does, because we don't take advantage of them. We don't ask for their money and spend it on parties at Mar-a-Lago like Trump does. So again, we're different in that way, and that we're not going to put up with shit from people.
Yeah,
just because they think they can do it.
I mean, just sort of, on Madison Cawthorn, just going back to him briefly again, was there a smoking gun where you kind of felt, well, we've got this and that's him? And in terms of election night, were you confident he was going to lose his seat, or were you surprised when it came through that he had?
Well, smoking guns. No, I never. I mean, I knew the last video we posted, which I don't know if it even made it into the UK. There may have been blocks, but did it make the dry humping video?
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Did you
see
maybe
it? Maybe you could tell people I haven't. I've seen it, but maybe you could tell people I haven't seen it. Maybe you could give us a. Maybe you could give us a polite.
I would encourage people not to see it, because you can't unsee it. But yeah, I mean, I think we did get some smoking guns that we thought would have an impact, because you have to remember, we were targeting Madison Cawthorn's voters, and we have a primary system here where voters can only vote in their party's primary, which is before the general election. So their party decides who their candidate is, and then they go up against each other in the fall election. So anyway, we're targeting conservatives, and conservative in this country, not your country. Conservatives in your country tend to be a little more realistic about life. The conservatives over here are the MAGAs, the Trump people, the right-wing politicians, which I think translates in the UK. But they're anti-abortion, pro-gun. God only knows how you reconcile the two of those. They're just traditional conservatives. So, we had to come up with information they could relate to. And I'll tell you, wearing lingerie on a cruise doesn't really resonate with most conservative right-wing folks in this country. And obviously, I will preface all this with, we don't give a shit about his sexuality, just like you guys don't over there. We don't care whether it's a homosexual or bisexual or whatever. It's the hypocrisy of it, because he votes against the LGBTQ community. He goes out of his way to define what marriage is. And the hypocrisy of that, then he, so he can do it in private. He can do it. Well, it wasn't private, it was public. but the rest of you, you need to abide by my rules or my view of what you should do. That was the hypocrisy of the whole thing. So, but conservative voters are like, huh? He's wearing, oh, well, somebody doctored that. He's wearing lingerie on a boat cruise. There's no way that's true. So then the next one was video that we received anonymously of him in a car singing some weird song in a very feminine voice with his cousin in the seat next to him. And he said something about, and this is out there because the Daily Mail actually exposed all this. He said something about, oh, I'd like to have a naked body beneath me. And then his cousin, who is his personal assistant, yes, happens in this country, paid for by the taxpayers to the tune of, 45,000 pounds a year, 75,000 US. He reaches his hand in the video over and says, I'd like to see a naked body too, and grabs his crotch. I mean, a member of Congress, cousin, men on men, I don't give a shit, except he doesn't believe that. That, and again, the Daily Mail picked it up, ran with it, and did a great job of exposing his hypocrisy. So so grandma and grandpa, I don't believe the lingerie. Oh my God, he's grabbing that guy's crotch. Well, maybe this is true. And then he puts out a whole 9-minute diatribe on Twitter defending himself, that it's all these liberals and rhinos, Republican in name only. All these terrible people have beaten up on me. Well, unbeknownst to him, we were about to push send on the video of him dry humping another man. And I will swear on a Bible and in front of Quran or whatever is put in front of me, this is the God honest truth. I wasn't aware that he'd put out that 9-minute diatribe. And we were on the phone with the lawyer just to make sure we weren't crossing any boundaries, as well as our team kind of debating whether we should do this or not. So he posts this 9-minute diatribe, which is clearly produced, scripted, and says these guys are all mean. And I was just horsing around in that video with my cousin, and getting very defensive about it. And then post it. And then literally 2 or 3 minutes later, I hit send and posted this other video of him in a hotel room being filmed by a third person. He's in a bed, he's naked, and he's jumping around on the bed. And then he slides over and puts his private parts in this guy's face and starts dry humping him, making the most guttural animal sounds you've ever heard in your life for 25 or 30 seconds. And that's at that point that I think in voters' minds, they're like, okay, we've had enough of this, and it wasn't politicized. We didn't put our, any video or anything wrapped around it. It was just the video. And that obviously would viral in the country. It's the sort of thing you can't unsee. So that was our smoking gun, really. But that came to us about a week before we published it, and we sat on it. We were hoping somebody else would put it out because it's not really the sort of thing that my sensibilities or the other folks in the organization sensibilities align with. But in the same token, we had 2 real questions in our minds that I think we couldn't get over. What would Cawthorn do with this video if it was his opponent? And we knew what he'd do. He would have put it out. He would have, and then denied it. And then the second thing was, do we, in the public interest, should we really sit on this? I mean, in the voters, is this the sort of thing that they should see or shouldn't see? And obviously we're not God, but we just made the determination that, well, we'll put it out and voters can decide what they see. And then at that point, the press glommed on to it. And I think that day was the end of his campaign.
Yeah.
Not because of me. It's his actions. I mean, that's the other thing we have to keep in perspective here. Everything that we put out, he did. You know, it wasn't us making it up or trying to create doubt when there wasn't any. It was just him. And if he's stupid enough to record these things and be part of these things, then in our minds, they're fair game. And so we put it out, and you know, there was some retribution on our part that we had to deal with. Number one, our web hosting service took us down because there was some nudity, although it was just his butt crack that you could see in the video because it was pretty blurry, which we complied with their request and got the site back up. Act Blue, which is the Democratic fundraising online tool, took us off their network, which was a big financial blow for us. And then the LGBTQ community, some saw it as gay bashing, exploitation. And honestly, Chris, exploitation or homophobia was never even part of our conversation. Oh, let's put this out as homophobia so Republicans will vote against him. That wasn't it. It was the hypocrisy of his actions versus the way he votes in Congress. I addressed those head on. I mean, some of the biggest critics I called, we had a conversation. There was some misunderstanding on some of their part, and some of them are still pissed at us. But I think at the end of the day, our actions justified the means at that point. So.
Sure. And then, you know, turning to Lauren Boebert. So, I mean, that's your new target, as you say, and you know, it's instead from, you know, Fire Cawthorn, it's now Fire Boebert. Was that something you had in mind, or was it just a success you had with Madison Cawthorn? You thought, right, we could do this again, or was it always your intention to start sort of moving around different political targets in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think our intent, my intention from the start was to build an organization that was very grounded within a race, had people on the ground, was a coalition building within that district, versus the Democratic National Committee, which, you know, each party has a state committee, but they don't do this sort of investigative, holding accountable sort of work because it's time consuming and frankly, it's expensive because we've got lawyers and investigators and writers and you know, we want to get it right, just like many news organizations, and ask any news organization how expensive it is to do this, and I'll tell you. But, and then there's also the Lincoln Project, which was it's a PAC, similar to Political Action Committee, PAC. It's regulated by the Federal Election Commission. So you have to file, and you can't steal money and take money from foreigners. You have to be an American citizen to donate. So there's a little bit of regulation there. But they're really focused on media and broader messaging, you know, which is helpful. But this is really taken Lincoln Project and put it on steroids because it's very localized. And that's been our success, I think, too. We don't just come in and Bigfoot or stomp on local organizations that maybe are already working on this. We come in and collaborate with them as much as we legally can, and we listen to them and respond to them. We take their information and we include them in the other side. When we get information, we vet it with them, and so it's build a coalition, and then we're pretty transparent about the way we've done it as well. And I think we don't hide behind who we are and what we're trying to do, which I think some organizations do, and it's like, well, everybody knows what you're doing. Everybody knows who you are. Why don't you just adult up and tell us the truth? So yeah, we started that with the intention, but you know what? Had we not had success with Cawthorn, you probably never would have heard of us. We wouldn't be having this conversation. And we can't, you know, on the record, we can't take full responsibility for firing Cawthorn. We'll take our share of it, whatever share that is. I don't know what. but because that race was very close. And we do more than just exposure or just more than holding these guys accountable. I mean, we had a whole text campaign where we sent over 1 million texts out to targeted voters in the district. You know, we probably sent 300,000 or 400,000 emails that were targeted to certain voters with messages that we hoped they would see as a reason to vote against the guy. And then, you know, we're doing grassroots organizing in certain parts of these counties. So it's not just a TMZ or gossip site, you know, it's using that and weaponizing that that information and then pushing it to the people that need to hear it and see it, because that's a problem in this country right now. The people that need to hear and see these messages are over here and we're over here. So we're kind of playing in the middle and trying to get that information to people in a way that would have an effect. And so anyway, yeah, we have, we're now targeting both Lauren Boebert, and unfortunately the expectations are so high. There people, literally people are expecting stuff right now. And we're 4 days into this. I'm on the ground here in Denver and meeting with some people later today and tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday to gather some more information. But the initial feedback I'm getting is there's lots of really interesting information that hasn't been published, and it's easier for folks to give it to us than to give it to a local journalist or a local political party, because sometimes the information is so damning that they're afraid of the retribution that either that candidate or the community could have on them. But if it's given to us anonymously and we honor that anonymity, which we can in this country, unless a judge tells us otherwise, you know, we can use it to great effect. So.
You know, does it change your process or your way of thinking that obviously Cawthorn, like you say, his people never engage with you, but no, I'm sure Boebert's people obviously saw what happened to him, and I mean, I'm sure they must be taking it seriously. They'd have to be stupid not to be now. They must be thinking, right, this is actually an issue. Does that kind of put you slightly on the back foot that your sort of element of surprise is gone a little bit?
Well, she doesn't know what we have, so and we have some pretty good stuff so far that hasn't been reported. And so, frankly, you know, we don't care. We don't care what she wants or thinks or people think, because we're not going to convince them. We're not going to change their minds. And we're not going to be intimidated. The only thing I do hesitate on, you know, at some point, I will know that we're being successful as if they come after me personally, you know, start making, you know, the pedophile stuff that they're going to make up, or speeding tickets or whatever, you know. I'll know that we're having a major effect, and that will be a badge of honor at that point. But, you know, we're very careful about what we do. We got a lot of stuff on Cawthorn we didn't use that was credible. But we just chose not to use it for various reasons. So, you know, listen, if she wants to engage with us, we'd love to. I'd love to sit down with her and have a conversation. She'll never do it because she's afraid. And she's got too much at stake now, based upon a lot of the information that I'm seeing. And she has a lot of things she's got to answer for. And that she's going to answer for them in the next 4 weeks, whether she wants to or not. Because we already have an angle that is pretty damning, which I can't talk about yet. But maybe I'll come back here with you, Chris, and I'll break it.
That'll be great. Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to hear. I'm sure we're all sort of salivating at the thought of this, because your Cawthorn stuff is pretty juicy. So I'm sure it's going to be pretty explosive. In terms of your own, because you mentioned there about your own coming after you, and I mean, heaven forbid anything like that happens. I mean, we don't want it going down that road. But in terms of your communications, I mean, we see a lot now with spyware and people hacking in emails, and I mean, I'm sure maybe you're getting some of that information the other way. So it goes both ways. I mean, how much have you had to change your lifestyle? Are you worried about your traveling arrangements? Are you worried about about people knowing what hotel you're in? Are these things becoming difficult? Are you thinking about these things? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about them. I mean, I also have worked with law enforcement in the past. I'm not a member of law enforcement, but I work with what we call the Secret Service here, which protects dignitaries and the president. And I've worked with them in the past. So I'm conscious of it. I'm not worried about it at this point. I think as I go out into her district, I'm not in her district right now. And obviously Denver's a big city, but once I get out there, I'll be a little more careful about where I stay and what information I talk to people about. Because, these people, they have guns and they're not rational. A lot of them just aren't rational thinkers. They believe that, they're above the law, not just Boebert, but their followers. So, yeah, I'll be careful, but I'm not overly concerned about it at this point.
Yeah, my final thing I just wanted to touch on was, I mean, as we say, Cawthorn was quite a very young man for the position he was in, and I had a look at Lauren Boebert, and she's like 35. Again, she's fairly young for for the position you're in. Is there an argument? Hypothetically, people saying, well, you're targeting these kind of younger, less established politicians that are easier to kind of rock. Why are you not going after other politicians that probably have done more or have got more things? Are you picking easy targets? Is that something people maybe label at? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, well, I don't think they're easy targets because they're MAGA. I mean, and that MAGA, and for folks in the UK that don't know, Make America Great Again is MAGA is a term for the Trumpites. And when you have Trump with you, it carries a significant amount of opportunity and money and voters. And no, I mean, I don't think we have, we're targeting based upon age. We're targeting based upon the fact that they're fucking crazy. I mean, if you just listen to this woman, and I don't think she's very intelligent, and nothing against unintelligent people, but don't pretend like you're smart when you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, and she does so much of that. You just go listen to her campaign speeches. She was also the woman that heckled President Biden on the floor of the House of Representatives during his State of the Union address. And there's a time and a place to heckle. That's her business. But come on, you're an elected representative of the country. You're going to heckle the president from the floor of the House. That doesn't make sense. Plus, she just seems to think, much like Cawthorn, that she's above the law. She's been cited for speeding, cited for gun violations. She didn't show up to court, and she gets away with it. And that's not right. That's not what this country's about. I mean, there may be a group of people that think they're above the law, but generally the law is applied to most everybody. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's that we're targeting the young and the defenseless. I think we're targeting those that are most egregious and don't believe the law applies to them. And they just happen to be stupid motherfuckers too. So.
And my final very quick thing, very generous for your time, Dave. My final very quick thing to ask you was, people watching us outside the US, can they donate? Can people get involved to because maybe they want to be part of this journey? And secondly, is there an argument that this could be an international thing where other countries start to see, well, hold on, this is actually, we've all got politicians who've got skeletons in the closet. I mean, I'm living in the UK, we've got a ton of them, but we don't hear about a lot of this stuff, or it comes out later in years and stuff. Is there an argument this could be almost a franchise model to go around the world?
Well, I thought about it, to be honest with you. I spent a lot of time in the UK and in other parts of the world. I think I mentioned to you on our introductory discussion that I'm, most of my heritage is English. I think that's probably why I'm so cantankerous. I mean, that's part of my soul, part of your country, part of your, you should, most Brits don't take, in English and the UK folks don't take shit from anybody. And I think that must be passed down from you folks to me. But I mean, I think so. I mean, if we can have success with Boebert and even just move the needle a little bit, we've got some pretty nasty characters in this country, but I don't think there's any reason we couldn't target the Boeberts and the Cawthorns and the Trumps of other countries, because the parties aren't doing it. I mean, that's the other thing, Chris, is, that if the Democratic Party was doing this effectively, we wouldn't get into all that and muck it up, but they don't. And the press tries to do it, but they don't necessarily have the resources to devote to this in depth. And the other thing we do, Chris, is we are unrepentant, and we are on these guys 24/7, literally to the point when we know where they're going to be out public, we put a camera on them. I went to one event where I think you'll get a kick out of this. Cawthorn, it's on our website and stuff, but on the firemadison.com website. But we filmed him presenting a check from the American taxpayers for a local community's economic development project, $200,000, which is a lot of money to the local folks, and they need it. It's good money, well spent. But he voted against the bill. So he's in this community, presenting this big check to the mayor and the council. And we stood there and we said, okay, Congressman, that was interesting. Did you vote for this bill or against it? Well, I voted for it, and then I voted against it on the final passage. And so my response was, and I was the guy that day. So my response was, so you were for it before you were against it. Is that right? And he's like, he got all flustered. But so we do that. And I think that's been part of the element that the parties don't really do. They're afraid of that conflict. And the candidates that are opposing him don't do it because they think they're going to alienate voters. So unfortunately, you have to be a U.S. national or a citizen to contribute to our effort. But if they have friends and family that are Americans, you can be abroad and donate at Fire Boebert, FIREBOEBERT.com. But they can also follow us on Twitter, Fire Boebert, Facebook, Counter Social, a couple others, all at Fire, FIREBOEBERT. And help us spread the word to their friends and family in America and in these places. And if anybody has a Madison Cawthorn or a Lauren Boebert in their country they want us to go after, then let us know on one of those websites or one of those socials. And you'll probably hear from me, because I'm fascinated with getting rid of scumbags, and I enjoy it. It's in my soul. I mean, I get a perverse pleasure out of it for some reason. I don't know why, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's worse perversions in the world than that, David. So Yeah, and I think I got some of those from the English too. But we'll talk about that in another. That can be part two. Yeah, but thank you so much for your time, David from American Muckrakers. It's been a pleasure. Very interesting, very insightful, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris, for having me.